Back in November 2020, Apple decided to turn their back on Intel processors and triumphantly launched the new Apple Silicon M1 processor. I bought a MacBook Air soon after in early 2021 while the buzz and fanfare was still active, and I was really happy with the performance when I bought it. But fast forward to 2024-25, and what's it like to use now? In a word, it's absolutely great. For my purposes. Let me tell you more and tell you about the battery. I got on board the Apple Silicon train with the most cost-efficient MacBook Air. It has 8GB of RAM and a 256 hard disk drive, and of course that much lauded M1 processor. Now 8GB of RAM doesn't sound like much, especially when compared to the top-end MacBooks and PCs that are kicking down the door with 128GB of RAM. And I must admit, I was a little skeptical of the spec at first, but I quickly found that the 8GB of RAM aligned with the M1 processor allows me to do everything I need. What are my uses, you may ask? The main reason I use my Mac is for Final Cut Pro. It's an Apple product, so it benefits from vertical integration, and it's totally optimized for use with the M chips, and my experience with it has been wholly positive. Granted, my videos aren't the most complex and I don't have layers and layers of tracks and edits. However, whenever I have skimmed over videos, it has been instant, and rendering for the final product is done quickly. As well as Final Cut Pro, I use Visual Studio Code and the Chrome and Safari browsers to get onto the internet, and even with loads and loads of tabs open, I've not experienced any slowdown in performance. On occasion, I use an external monitor and I connect to it using an adapter, as the M1 MacBook Air doesn't have an onboard HDMI port. I typically only use one external monitor, but I must admit I was disappointed to learn sometime after buying that you can only connect one external monitor natively with the M1 MacBook Air. There are suggested workarounds such as buying a DisplayLink docking station which will support multiple displays, but having to do this is an extra hassle and cost, and a bit annoying that this wasn't made clear at the time. I would describe the M1 MacBook Air's 256GB hard drive as adequate. I do find that I occasionally have to do some disk cleanups as I run out of space with the large video files I use, but it's easy enough to offload them to external storage or simply delete them. With regards to the battery, it originally advertised a battery life of 18 hours for web use, and I can say after using it for over 3 years, there hasn't been any noticeable drop off in battery performance. It still holds a charge and will last for the best part of a day, and I like that. And as you can see from here, after 3 years of virtually daily usage, the battery is at 87% charging capacity, which is pretty good in my book. There's no having to live off the umbilical power cord for a good while yet. I should mention the display as well. It's a 13.3 inch screen with a 256x1600 resolution, the same as the current M4 MacBook Air. It's plenty bright and the definition is very clear, and again, plenty good for my needs. It's not 4K, but personally that doesn't bother me. Quite simply, I'm happier now than when I first got it in 2021. Why? Because it exceeded my hopes in terms of performance then, and now, years on, the fact it's still standing up strong with no visible weakness is extra satisfying. It is nice to have the latest and greatest MacBook for sure. We know there's one every year. However, sometimes having what's required to do the job is enough. For me, I don't see the upside in swapping my M1 for an M4, as the performance increase doesn't justify the cost. I'll keep using my M1 MacBook Air until the wheels fall off. And if you're considering getting an M1 MacBook Air, just ask yourself what your use case will be. Will you be using a lot of heavy locally powered apps, or will you be doing most of your stuff on the web and watching videos? And bear in mind that the RAM, hard drive and M1 processor aren't upgradable, as they're all in one chip, so be sure to choose correctly from the outset, and as I mentioned, one external monitor as standard. I'll also mention the webcam is 720p, but it's more than good enough, and the speakers are wholesome and positioned beside the keyboard, which helps with sound projection. So would I recommend the M1 MacBook Air in 2024-25? In a word, absolutely yes. This is the best value MacBook on the market by far. Apple made this one too good. Take advantage. That, in a nutshell, is my experience with my M1 MacBook Air. Do you own one? If so, do you have a similar experience? Or are you deciding between this and another model? Let me know in the comments. Until next time.